Hello, this is Judith Barnes, Dr. Judith, as I like to call myself. Not because I really want to make a fuss about myself, but I think mostly because for so many years after I earned my doctorate degree, I was embarrassed to use the title. And so, plus for the future, that I see where God has taken me, Dr. Judith is a shorter version of what I would like to be or I need to be called. So this is Dr. Judith. Hope things are going more than well for you. On this day, it's Monday morning, 10:20 something, on August 11th, 2014. Very dreary here in Snellville, Georgia. Very dreary in terms of the weather. Having a little difficulty myself this morning, just rising above certain thoughts and concerns that I'm having. But I have to share this with you, that despite those concerns and despite what even I'm not going to give the devil credit for anything. He's not worthy. But our minds do wander at times, and we do have concerns and issues that will kind of dull our senses and even dull maybe even just the wonderful thoughts that we have usually. So I started out that way, but let me tell you the good news is that even though I started out that way this morning, I would not allow it to continue. So I went into the Word and I listened to some devotionals of other ministers and speakers that just reminded, not just that reminded me of my life and this lovely journey that the Lord has me on. And so I am, like the eagle that I am soaring despite what's around and despite the weather. And usually the weather doesn't bother me, but as I said, everyone has moments when they feel a little dreary or a little out of sorts. Anyway, as the song says, the songwriter says, it is well with my soul. Though things might look difficult and though things might be harsh, it is well with my soul. So in that, I want to share something that I really absolutely love. It's a story about Abraham, and when the Lord had given him instructions to sacrifice his son Isaac. Now remember how long Abraham had waited for his son Isaac, the son of promise. Remember how long he had waited for this child. He was 100 years old when he had this child. So you know that this is a child that he really delighted in, because he was the son of promise. And when God promises you something and you get it, you don't play with that. But this is the very same son that the Lord has instructed him to sacrifice. And so I'm going to read in Genesis chapter 22. I'm going to read a few verses and then I'm going to make a few comments about it. Genesis chapter 22 verse 1. Now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And Abraham said, Here I am. Then he said, Take now your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering, on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Verse 3 says, So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you. Though that's verses 1 through 5. And I stopped there because I remember when I first heard the story about Abraham and his son and God giving him instructions to sacrifice his son, I remember thinking to myself, how amazing. First of all, that he was going to follow through and do what the Lord told him to do. That's amazing in itself. This is the son he's waited for so long. And here it is. He's actually being obedient. My old word, that big word. You know, obedience is such a powerful thing. And in this season, I've discovered through my relationship with the Lord that truly, 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 obedience is better than sacrifice. And so here's Abraham. I mean, he's a patriarch. I mean, he's one of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And here it is, Abraham is being obedient to the Lord. He's told to sacrifice him, and he's taken his only son. It's emphasized. It's actually in italics in the Bible when he says, only son. Then here it is, actually it says only is not in italics, son is in italics. And the reason for that is because Abraham does have another son, which he had with the maid, Hagar. You remember that whole story when Abraham's wife Sarah suggested to him to go in and be with her maid so that they could have a child, which God had promised them, but of course they were helping God out. So out of that situation came Ishmael. But Ishmael was not the son God intended. That was not the son of promise. So here the emphasis on son is because Isaac is the son that God promised Abraham and Sarah. So like I said, I was always amazed that he did take him, which all points to obedience. And I want you to also realize that in this story, and a lot of the Bible stories, it's a kind of Christ situation where just like Jesus was obedient to God, Abraham was being obedient to God. You know, Jesus was obedient to God and was born of a virgin, lived on this earth, and willingly died, was crucified for our sins. And so in all of these stories, obedience is very obvious. So it's a kind of Christ-like behavior. Not kind of, it is. And so anyway, what's really revealing and powerful about this story is that though Abraham was obedient, and this was his only son, and yet he did what he was supposed to do, and he took his son to the mountain that he was instructed to take him, and while as he was leaving, the two young men that he took with him, and these two young men worked for him, I'm sure, worked for Abraham, and he took them, and before he went up to the mountain with Isaac, where he was going to sacrifice Isaac, his words to the two men was very indicative of trust in God, very much showing that he believed before he even went up to that mountain that God had already provided for him, that Isaac would have been spared. And verse 5 says, and Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you. Meaning that Abraham expected that he would come back with Isaac. Abraham trusted the Lord, and despite everything that he was asked to do that seemed very negative, and certainly he had his son, he was going up there was no interruption to the act that was about to take place, but Abraham in his words to these two young men showed he believed that God would spare Isaac. So in our daily conversations, when we're being obedient to God and when we're following his instructions, we have to continually be mindful of the words we use, of the things that we say. The Bible says that the tongue is the smallest member of the body and yet the most powerful, and I would say dangerous. So we are to be careful what we say in the midst of difficulties. Even after God has instructed us to do something that seems harsh and painful, we're still to be mindful to speak in the affirmative, to speak in a way that says we trust Him, that He has it all worked out despite how things look and seem. Because for Him to tell the young men that he and the lad would return means that he trusted God. He trusted that God was going to release Isaac back to him, and that he would not have to lose the son, Isaac, that he had waited all these years for. Folks, it is difficult in any season to give up that which we love the most, that which we adore the most. But when God sees that you're willing to give your best to Him, when He sees that you're willing to trust Him despite everything, when He sees that you're willing to return to Him what He gave you, what took so many years for you to receive, when He sees that you're willing, that's when I believe that He says, okay, I'm going to provide a ram in the bush. And that's what it was called. That mountain was called, after that situation, it was called He will provide. Jehovah Jireh, our provider, provided a ram in the bush for Abraham so that Isaac did not have to lose his life. It is all about obedience. It is all about trust. So, like I said, for me, the really powerful thing is that he not just felt that the Lord was going to release Isaac back to him. He said it when he said to the two young men, you wait here, we'll be back. Not I'll be back after I've sacrificed my son, but we will be back. That is showing trust in God. That's showing obedience, and always being careful to say the positive, to say the hopeful, to say what we expect. We expect the best of God, then say it. Then say, despite how the circumstances look, it is well. It is well with my soul. I pray that we all become more like Abraham and be obedient. And even in our situations that seem very negative, and we think, why is God doing this? Why is He allowing this? That even while we ask those questions on the inside, that we will also use this tongue, this littlest member of the body, to say, though you slay me, yet will I trust you, as Job said. And to say, as Abraham said to these two young men, wait here. The lad and I are going up to the mountain, and we will be back. We hope that you have a tremendously awesome day, and that you will think on these things. And remember that obedience is far better than sacrifice. And we must trust, but we must say that we trust. Until next time, this has been Dr. Judith. Do have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Hi there again. This is Dr. Judith. It's want to share with you today about from Luke chapter 2, verse 41 through 50. Basically, this is a story about Jesus having gone to Jerusalem with his parents, as usual, for Passover, the feast of the Passover. And he was 12 years old at the time. And when they left to go back home, Joseph lingered, as the word says. It says in verse 43 of Luke chapter 2, when they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy, Jesus, lingered behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. So when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, seeking him. Now it was after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, Joseph and Mary, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. And verse 49, which is what I want to talk with you briefly about today, Jesus says, why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? I love that. What that says to me, I mean, Jesus Christ is Jesus Christ, even when he was a child. And even though he had not come to the fullness of his calling and what he was on earth to do, he was on his way there. And this is definitely a step in that direction. And even at the age of 12, because he was Jesus and boy all at the same time, he knew what his calling was. And that's what I want to deal with. I want to talk with you about commitment and obedience. That Jesus was obedient to the Father of the universe. He was obedient to God. Even as a 12-year-old boy, he was obedient to the point where he stayed back. Though his grown parents had gone along, he stayed back. Certainly he wasn't worried about any harm. He wasn't disturbed about anything, because he knew who he was. He knew what his calling was. And that is such a powerful thing. And I pray that we as human beings who are made in his image and who are walking on this journey in his image and, walking towards perfection, we'll never get there on this earth. But as we do that we find out what our calling is. We discover through him, through reading the word, through in prayer, prayers to him, asking him, what is it that you brought me here for, Lord? What is it that I'm supposed to do? Because I want to be about your business. I don't want to be about the world's business. I certainly don't want to be about my business, because that's confusing. I've tried that before. So to hear Jesus Christ in his own words, anything written in red is what he said. And so it is in red in Luke chapter 2, where he says, verse 49, where he says, basically, why were you searching for? You must have realized. But they didn't know, because verse 50 says, but they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. So many times we can know our destiny. We can have a clear idea where we're headed. And even the people closest to us, who love us the dearest, who want the best for us, don't understand. And sometimes I can tell you for myself what has happened is that because they don't understand, I find myself trying to explain to them what my mission is, what my calling is. And recently God has been showing me, stop trying so hard. They don't understand. They can barely hear what you're saying with any clarity. So be about my business. Love, care for them, and continue to do what I tell you to do for them and towards them, but do not expect them to understand what you're doing for me on earth. Do not expect that every move that you make is going to look odd to them, because I'm sure as a 12-year-old, Jesus' behavior looked odd to his parents. They're adults. And it must have looked odd to them that their son would have done this without any kind of permission from them, without any say-so from them. Because when you know where you're headed, when you know what your call is, you really don't need a lot of permission except from the Father. So Jesus, as a boy, had permission from his Father to do what he was doing. But they didn't quite understand that. So my hope and prayer is that whoever is listening or watching this will, as you go through life and as we train our children and educate our children, that we will come to realize that when you're called to do something special, the Bible says that to whom much is given, much is required. And when you're given much to do, to try to explain that to others is not always the wisest thing. And they're not open to hearing it. If they're not on the same track that you are, if they're not traveling down the same road, if they don't have the same or similar understanding spiritually, and they don't have a relationship with the Lord for sure, they're not going to understand what you're saying. It kind of goes back to Joseph and his brothers when he told them about his dreams. They did not have what he had. They were not in the same position with the Lord. They did not have the relationship with God as he did. So what he heard from the Lord is not what they would have heard. So we need to stop trying, and I've been guilty of this, especially in the last several months, where I'm on this journey and I look odd to people, and I know that I do, and I sound odd because, I'm trusting the Lord despite how the circumstances look, and I'm holding on to His word, and I'm continuing to say it is well with my soul despite negativity, and people in the natural are saying, what is wrong with her? But they don't know what I know. They have not heard what I've heard from the living God. They don't have the relationship with Abba Father that I have. They probably have another relationship, but certainly not the one that I have. So to try to make people understand, it doesn't always work. It can be very futile. So this story, like I said, reminds me of Joseph and his brothers. He was trying to let them know what the dreams were about. They weren't ready to hear that, and you know what? They weren't supposed to understand, because destiny had to be fulfilled. And if they understood it, then he would not have reached his destiny, because they had to misunderstand in order to throw him in the pit. So Jesus' parents did not understand. They did not understand, but he knew what his mission was. He knew the plan that God had for him. He knew why he came to this earth, and he knew that he'd have to die to free us as sinners. Even at 12 years old, he had a pretty good inclination that he was about his Father's business. I pray for all of us that have heard this, and that we'll share it with others, and we'll encourage others to go to the Lord, to find out, to discover what is it that we have to do for him on earth. What is the business that he has decided that we should be doing for him? And then encourage each other to be about our Father's business. Until next time, this has been Dr. Judith. Do have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Hello there, Dr. Judith here again with you. Today I'm going to share with you from Luke chapter 2. It's Luke chapter 2, and it's verses 41, and I'm going to briefly go over 41 to verse 50. And it's about Jesus as a little boy. And, for me, when I read about Jesus in any form at any time, I'm really excited. I'm getting all this knowledge about him, and I'm getting closer to him, and I'm learning more about me as I'm doing this. As I read the word, more is being revealed to me about him, and as I get revelation about him and illumination, and I get all this really good stuff, I'm changing. So it's an exciting thing for me. And this is chapter 2 of Luke, is dealing with verses 41 through 50, is dealing with Jesus and his parents when they had gone to Jerusalem for the Passover, and they were on their way back, and they realized he was not with them. Love the story, because it just shows when you're on a mission, when you have a job, even if you're 12 years old and you know what you're supposed to be doing, what an awesome and wonderful thing it is. And so verse 41 of chapter 2 of Luke says, his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. When they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. Verse 45, so when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, seeking him. Now so it was that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, they were amazed. This is Joseph and Mary. And his mother said to him, son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. Verse 49, and he said to them, why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? Verse 50, but they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. Now, the verse that I really want to deal with is verse 49. It is always amazing to me that when you know what you're supposed to do, it's so much easier to do it than have a whole lot of discussions about it. And when you know what you're supposed to do, even if it seems odd to everybody else, including your parents, even if it seems odd because of your age, even if it seems odd because you don't have the right clothes or the right speech or whatever it might be, when you know your mission, when you know what you're supposed to do, nothing interferes. Here is Jesus Christ, at the age of 12, not yet coming to his full calling, not yet arriving at his place of destiny, not yet fulfilling his purpose. But at age 12, he knew that he had to be about his Father's business. I just love it. It's exciting to me that at such a, I know that Jesus was never just a regular child. It was never just a regular 12-year-old. I mean, it says that he was in there talking and listening and discussing with these men who were much older than he was, and men who I'm sure knew the word and could discuss at great length. And it says that he was there amongst teachers, in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. Now, in order for him to have done all of that, he couldn't just be a regular 12-year-old. He had to be Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And so even while he was Jesus Christ, the Son of God, he was still a 12-year-old. And even though he was a 12-year-old, he was not a normal 12-year-old. He was an awesome and unusual 12-year-old. But he was still a 12-year-old, and so his parents couldn't understand, why did you do that to us? You made us worry. But for him, being Christ and boy all at the same time, being Jesus Christ and a boy at the same time, he knew it was okay for him to have done what he did. And that's being assured. That's knowing what you're here for. That's knowing what you're supposed to do. And the most powerful people on this earth are not the ones with a lot of money necessarily. Not the ones who are necessarily highly educated. It's not the ones who have a lot of social connections. The most powerful people in my thinking, in my own life, are the people who know what their mission statement is and they're doing it. So even if you're 12 years old, you are already living out your mission statement. He knew what he was here for. He knew what he was supposed to be doing. He was supposed to be about his Father's business. It is a lovely part of the whole story of Jesus Christ, is that at 12 years old, he already had a clear picture of what he was here to do. And even if he didn't have it all at once then, he sure gave it a good start. And that is something that I pray that our children will have. I certainly wish I had it younger. I wish I had known younger, at a younger age, what I was here for. But that's okay, because God does give you beauty for ashes, and he does make up for lost time. But in the case of Jesus Christ, there would be no lost time to make up for, because his life was already perfectly planned, and he was in total obedience. You notice how that word obedience keeps coming up every time I talk, every time I share with you? Yes, he was in total obedience to his Father, and as a result, he was about his Father's business. This has been Dr. Judith. Again, I wish you a most wonderful and awesome day, and pray that next time that I share, you'll be available to hear. God bless and take care.